Hello, I'm John Graham, and welcome to our 243rd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our panel will discuss the impact of the media on our nation's politics. Today's discussion begins with Brian Loblaw, president of R&B Financial Services, followed by Tom Finley, retired Vice President of Human Resources Development at Rubbermaid Incorporated, followed by Patty Haskins, former member of the Wadsworth City Council and the faculty of Wadsworth Senior High School. Brian, ever since our country was founded, the media has played an important role in politics and the conduct of government affairs. How do you think the media has changed the impact on politics and our political life in recent times?
Well, I think it has had an overall negative effect on how we're governed now, because it seems as though we're just about the soundbite. We're not getting any real in-depth analysis from any objective media. They've all pretty much shown their bias as far as who they're rooting for and how they present the news and the pieces, parts of the stories that they decide to highlight or sort of diminish or not even report. So I think that overall they've, created sort of a negative environment. And for the truth to cut through and for people to be able to actually understand what's going on, it's been very, very difficult, because with the 24-hour news cycle, whoever sets the narrative for that day, that's all you get throughout the course of that discussion or that particular day. And I think when you look at the people that have been podcasting, there has been much more interest in what they call long form podcasting. And that is, they're interviewing somebody for several hours, and they're really getting to the meat of what they believe in and what their message is and what the story is. And you're not getting that anymore on any of the legacy media. You name them, they're just not interested in that. And so they're more interested in getting out their side of the story, how they want to set the narrative, what they want people to believe. And I think it's to our detriment. And, when Joe Rogan and his podcast has more people listen to him on a daily basis than CNN, that tells me that CNN has gone off the rails when it comes to their messaging. Back in the day, CNN was, the authority almost of news. I mean, if CNN said it, it had to have been true. Or the legacy media, if Walter Cronkite or Dan Brokaw, if they said something, you knew that story was vetted and that you could believe it. Now, not so much. So I believe that it's been a very negative impact on the way we govern, because our senators and congressmen and the government, they're just trying to get out their message. And I think if you really want to see this in action, watch some of the White House press briefings.
Oh my!
It's almost comical. And so, I'll leave it at that. I think I've been pretty outspoken on my feelings about media over the course of our conversations that we've had here. So, that's pretty much the way I feel.
Don't run away. We're just getting warmed up.
Okay.
Tom, what are your thoughts?
Well, I almost want to say ditto to what you just said. I think we are victims of selling more than we are of reporting. And that kind of says it all, because the motivation, therefore, of the truth is already jeopardized with the kind of thing we're going to hear. So it's a prejudice thing, but it's not prejudice necessarily in terms of the politics. It's in the making of money. What's going to sell, not what we want to hear.
Are you aware of any unbiased news source?
I can't think of one. I haven't seen one that I would trust, if you will. I'm always trying to look between the lines of what is being said.
Patty, where are you on this topic?
You know, I read an article about a week ago or so that's made the comment that our news stations need to start adding or hiring journalists as opposed to hiring political pundits that come from particular administration. This is, one of the problems. When you pick up a newspaper and you read it, you have all of the articles that are supposedly factual, reporting what the essence of what a journalist should be doing. And when you want opinion, you know exactly where opinion is. It's in the editorial section. And there are bylines, and you can choose to read the conservative bylines. You can choose to read the liberal bylines. But you know that what you're getting is a slanted opinion about things. And that's not the case with the media now. All of the stations have a bent either to the right or to the left. And for every one on the right, there's one on the left. I've always felt that if you really want to hear all aspects of the news, you have to listen to more than one station. You can't just listen to Fox all day and think that you're getting the whole story. You can't listen to MSNBC all day and think that you're getting the whole story. I know many times Fox News will put up a headline saying that NBC and CBS and CNN didn't cover this or only covered this topic for 30 seconds. Well, Fox does the same thing. There are certain topics which they won't cover because it doesn't meet their political criteria. When you look at the people that are actually proclaiming what they determine is the news on these stations, what you're getting are pundits and people that have been hired from political campaigns or have finished their jobs in Washington. I mean, you look at MSNBC, they have Jen Psaki, a former communications director or spokesman for the Biden administration. You have Michael Steele, former head of the RNC. You have Nicole Wallace, who was on the campaign committee with John McCain. You have Claire McCaskill, former senator in Missouri. And these people are paid contributors, and you're getting their viewpoints. You go over to Fox, you have Kayleigh McEnany, the former spokesperson for the Trump administration. You had, until she ran for governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who had that same position as spokesperson for the White House until she gave up that job and resigned. You have Jason Chavez. You have Trey Gowdy? Is that his name?
Yes.
Trey Gowdy. And these are all people that are not objective. And they're giving their opinions as facts. And unfortunately, you don't get those facts. And this would be, what we need to see more of is that traditional journalist who approaches a topic with a blank slate and tries to actually find out what facts are and what is true and what is not. And we're not getting that. Very honestly, Brian, I don't think that you get it on a podcast either, because too many of the people that are heading that podcast have an agenda to start with. and they bring their bias into that. And that is very difficult. But the hardcore journalists of the past were the people that came in without that bias, and they let the story go where the facts took them, not based upon their bias. And until we see more of that, I think it's very difficult to say that news stations, as we see them on TV, the media, are actually providing the news. We need to have more Walter Cronkites out there and Edward R. Murrows. And
Well,
this
I
is
would
the person.
I'm about ready to ask that question. When you think about the old days, were they really that unbiased, or did we just think that they were? I mean, Huntley Brinkley and Walter Cronkite and Douglas Edwards and everybody doing the news on television. I mean, radio, then television.
I think for the most part, they did present the facts. Now, I mean, there are cases where, like, during FDR's reign, I mean, there was an unwritten law amongst all of the journalists that you don't take pictures of him in a wheelchair, that you don't talk about the fact that he was invalid. But other than that, they did report the facts.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is, and Patty, makes a good point about journalism. I believe, journalism, as far as the news organization, it's dead. One of the podcasts I listen to is Barry Weiss. It's called Honestly, and they're about an hour and a half long. Now, Barry Weiss is a moderate liberal who was hired by the New York Times, and in short order was fired because she didn't go along with the party line. And the paper of record, that old gray lady, the New York Times, that prided themselves on reporting, you ran down your sources, you had sources, they were verified. The editors went through your story and just made sure that everything was tight before you printed a story. Now it's a joke. And, they've had to retract articles because the sources were fabricated. There were quotes that were just fabricated. There's plagiarism. There's all these things that basically would get anybody run out of town if it was ever discovered that you plagiarized or you created sources or you created stories just to further your narrative and to beef up your story. That's dead now. I mean, these people that put themselves out there as journalists, they would fail the test just from 25 or 30 years ago. There's no more Bob Woodwards. They're not going to follow a story. They've got sort of what the story they think they should have, and they'll go down that path and making sure that the conclusion is what they expected it to be. So that's the sad part about it is.
Well, Bob Woodward has become very biased.
Recently, yeah, because you're not going to get invited on any of these news shows and any of these, second tier talk shows
unless you support it. Yeah.
Unless you support it. That's what's crazy about it. So yeah, I mean, I think Fox News is just as bad as CNN and MSNBC. I don't believe that there is one. But, you have to be sort of judicious in the podcasts that you listen to and the people that you listen to. Yeah. And at least you have the opportunity to say, yeah, I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Have any of you seen the movie Spotlight?
No.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's the Boston Globe.
It is.
Wrong
newspaper. It is covering the Catholic Church.
Exactly. And, there was a case where, and you had a print media that went searching for information, and understand this was in Boston. And that paper would have tended to support the church and wanted to support the church. But their journalists went out because they had this bit of a story and brought it to the attention of the country and did their job as journalists. And we just don't see that anymore. And that wasn't too long ago. I mean, it wasn't like this was in the 1800s that this happened.
Whatever happened to cardinal law? from Boston?
I don't remember.
Well, he
think-
went to the Pope invited him to the
Oh, that's right.
Vatican.
Yes.
But I haven't heard. I don't even know if he's still alive. But there's an
So
organization.
So I have a question then. If you changed the target to the Democratic Party in Boston, would the story have been as well researched, for politics, compared to going after the Catholic Church? And what I have seen is that there seems to be a green light on any religious organization, whatever denomination you belong to. If there's a hit piece to be written, believe me, they're going to run it down. But there seems to be a little bit of a wall when it comes to your politics. So I'm not saying they didn't do a good job.
I don't think that was necessarily the case there, because of the fact that city is predominantly, Irish Catholic, and the people that were investigating were Irish Catholic.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they were doing an attack on religion. They were reluctant to do so as much as they would perhaps going against the Democratic Party. So
yeah,
I'm not sure I see that there.
Mm-hmm.
But
I have no idea. I just would raise the question of how much influence sponsors have on the decisions that get made on hiring.
An immense amount.
Yeah.
Can you give an example?
They have done their best to cancel, pull their advertising. What was the one just recently that the guy came out and he lost like most of his sponsors? I think he might have made a comment about trans women or trans something or other, and it was over, for him. They did their best to pull every source of funding and the ads and all that stuff. I think it's an immense problem.
Well, that's what I think, like when Tucker Carlson was fired or Bill O'Reilly were fired from Fox, they both had said some pretty obnoxious things and horrible things, but they didn't really get rid of them until, well, first of all, it cost them money in a lawsuit, but also because their sponsors were dropping out right and left. Glenn Beck, I think that was the reason he went, was because no sponsor would come on air, and if they're not paid for it, that network's not going to keep them.
Yeah.
There's an organization that I had never heard of until I started doing research for this conversation, called All Sides Media. Have you ever heard of All Sides Media?
No.
They rank news sources, and according to their politics. And I made a list only of the TV networks and not the print media so much. But the only one that they classified as very definitely left was MSNBC. And what they referred to as left-leaning, they included ABC News, CBS News, CNN, NBC, and NPR. They were all classified as left-leaning. There was only one that they classified as being center, and that was News Nation. Now, I haven't watched that a lot. I should watch it more. Every time I've watched it, I keep waiting for them to go one way or another. Whatever the motivation is for networks to have their own political bent, it must be a very serious thing, because almost all of them do. News Nation doesn't, but they're brand new, or fairly new anyway. Of the right-leaning now, they had Fox Business is the only, and I'm assuming that's a television network.
Yeah.
And on the very definitely solidly right was Fox News, and that's the only one.
Not Newsmax.
Pardon me?
Not Newsmax. I think Newsmax is farther right than
Oh,
Fox
yes,
News.
yes, Newsmax.
Okay.
I didn't include that as television shows because I didn't know that it was. Is that
Yeah,
a
it is.
television network?
It's-
Oh,
It's a
okay.
network, yeah.
I know that I try really hard to, no, I take that back. I don't try anywhere near hard enough to get a balanced view. I tend to be conservative, as you may have recognized it from time to time. And I try to do what you do, Patty. I mean, I know that you really search to get a balanced view of things, and you will watch Fox and you watch MSNBC, and the others. I can't do that. I get so annoyed with MSNBC when I'm watching it. I really try to force myself to do it, but I don't have what you've got, Patty, because I can't stick with it. You know, it's a very difficult thing to try to look at a balanced view. And I'm wondering, back in the old days, I know that Huntley and Brinkley, they were very, very favorable toward John Kennedy. But I don't remember them ever being very positive about Richard Nixon. Tom, you might be how old were you, Patty, in the Kennedy administration?
I was in high school.
Yeah.
Junior high, I take that back.
Yeah.
So
Brian, you were a pup.
I just see the newsreels.
Yeah. Well, you see, I liked John Kennedy. That was my first election that I was able to vote, and I voted for Kennedy. It wasn't until 4 years later, when Lyndon Johnson was finishing up the Kennedy administration and he was running for president in '64, that I really turned to the right. I thought he was the worst president we ever had. Anyway, he was president for only 6 years, but that's my take on it. I don't know. Are you all? I mean, Patty, do you watch news on NBC and CBS? And
sometimes it depends upon the day and the time. You don't get as much news on NBC. And you know, the major networks, they're only on from 6 o'clock to 7. You have that hour on which to, get that news. And you don't get all the topics that you really want to hear about. So I'll go to the cable stations, and there are, like you, John, there are shows I cannot watch. I cannot watch Sean Hannity. I have tried. I can't do it. Janine Pirro just drives me. Oh, and Laura Ingram. Those are the three that drive me. I've watched them, but it's difficult. There are people on MSNBC that I can't watch. I do not like listening to Joy Reid. I think she goes off the deep end. So, I mean, I have maybe an unbiased bias.
What has all of this done to our political leadership in this country? Are we less capable of selecting good leaders now because of this?
We are in such a bind. I just can't imagine we are here with two of the most unfavorable candidates in any poll. Any poll shows that Donald Trump and Joe Biden, they're most people, if they're honest, they want neither one of the guys.
There was a new poll that showed Bobby Kennedy being ahead of both of them.
And favorability.
Favorability.
Yeah.
Which is
bananas. one of the shows I can't stand is The View. Now, more people get their news from shows like that.
I know.
They get it from Colbert.
And I don't watch it.
I get it. You know what? I'm trying to think. We were somewhere and we might have had a day off or something, and they had it on, and I started watching it, and I'm like, this is not good. You know, if
Yeah.
people are getting their news from The View, they're sadly off the deep end. And
You know, I remember back not too long ago when Jon Stewart was doing the Daily Show. Now, of
Yeah.
course, back on it now on Mondays, but when he was doing the Daily Show, they did polls just like you said, Brian,
Yeah.
and more people were getting their news from Jon Stewart
yeah,
than from anywhere else.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
Jon Stewart is someone I enjoy listening to because actually he'll go after both sides. Yes, he is definitely left leaning.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Actually, I have to confess that I do not watch any news programs on TV. That I
Good for
read.
you.
I read magazines
Yeah,
that have
Yeah.
had a chance at least to digest something and put it in print. And that's where I go now
Yeah.
for my news, if you will.
yeah,
But the print media is getting smaller and smaller all the time.
It
oh
is.
yeah,
which
The
is sad.
newspapers are dying all the time.
yeah.
I'll go back to my original question. What kind of an impact does this have on the wisdom of our leadership? It was Pompeo the other day. He said he just couldn't run for president. He might be somebody's vice president, but it's look what Trump has done in the last 3.5 years. He has been campaigning constantly. Who can do that? How many good leaders are out there that just aren't going to pay the price of you run for office and you say that there's going to be half of the media that hates you, and you're going to just get clobbered all the time.
Well, there's this issue too, and I'm guilty as charged. I will look at when I do see people talking like Trump or any other one leading and trying to become something, their behaviors. I don't listen to what they say. I watch what they do and the manner in which they present. And my gosh, it's telling. It's a very telling thing. Some are actually mentally ill. They're just all wrapped up in themselves and they've lost the facts, and they come out as lies when they're not intending them as lies. They're just ignorant and they're just investing and talking.
Well, unfortunately, we've outlived our welcome here on this program.
That'll be the day.
We'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
John.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.